Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Women Rising Wednesdays with Arise with Sally Goodwin. I'm really excited to have you all here today and very excited and incredibly nervous about this first lot of interviews that we're going to do for Women Rising. This is all, you all know me, my technological shortcomings, etc. So I'm not exactly sure what this will all look like, but hey, you know what, if God's on it, it's going to be great. And so I am hugely excited and humbled and privileged to have my very special friend, Carol Joy Williams, joining me on the very first interview for Women Rising Wednesdays. And Carol is special for many reasons, but one of them because she was prepared to be my guinea pig, prepared to put her hand up and be like, I'll do the first lot. So that makes her even more special in my eyes. But I wanted to just give you a very quick background on Carol, apart from being an amazing friend and just an overall incredible human being, a little bit about her. And I need to read my notes here, people, because I couldn't memorize it all. But so Carol was born and raised in Pretoria. For all you Pretoria people out there, this is a gem right from the heart of Pretoria. She obtained her master's degree in music therapy and moved to Cape Town in 2010 for her very first job at an NGO. 11 years later, now pay particular attention to this, people. 11 years later, and with way more life experience, she is co-founder and co-director of South Africa's very first creative audio agency, The Stellar Effect. I want you to just get that again. The very first creative audio agency started by my friend, Carol. She's also a performing artist and has recently launched her own podcast, which you must subscribe to. Her podcast is called Navigating Life. There's been an intro and one episode so far, so you have time to subscribe and you won't be missing out on a whole lot of things. So go and subscribe to that. It's an incredible podcast. She has worked in prisons, hospitals, businesses, on stages, in churches, and even in a coffee shop on a Saturday morning for extra cash. Carol has a heart for true freedom, because freedom is a word that is bandied around very much these days, and true freedom looks like something slightly different, and for experiencing the power of knowing Jesus and walking in wholeness. Welcome, my friend, to this very first interview on Women Rising. It is so good to have you here.
Thanks so much, Sally, and it's so cool to be your guinea pig. And yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and share some of my story. And I love seeing people like moving into more of what they love doing. So I'm kind of being here because I know this has been something on your heart for a long time. So being your guest on this and your first one is so special for me. So thank you so much.
Maybe just quickly share a little bit about your podcast, because I really want lots of people to subscribe. So share a little bit about your podcast and your heart behind it.
Cool. Yeah. So I've had this idea. So one of the things that we do at the Stellar Effect, you mentioned the business that I co-founded. We do a lot of podcast production. And so it's kind of in my world, and I've been, I think, in lockdown, probably quite early on in lockdown last year, I started thinking about starting my own podcast. It had kind of always been in the back of my mind, but I hadn't had the capacity or the energy to do my own. It's podcast production is quite intense. And so, yeah, I had just not really had the capacity, but the idea sort of, it probably dropped in about May last year, and I started thinking about it. And then eventually at the beginning of this year, a friend of mine was like, cool, so you've been speaking about doing this thing for like 7 months. Where is it? Why don't you just get going? And that was the fire I needed to get going. And basically, so it's called the Navigating Life podcast, as you mentioned. It's available on Apple and Spotify and wherever else people listen to podcasts. So if you search for Navigating Life podcast with Carol Joy Williams. You should come across it. And I think for me, in like my journey, I feel in many ways I've like bashed around in the dark, which when I talk to other people, I feel like that's also how a lot of other people have experienced life, you know. And
Definitely.
yeah, and I think for me, I had this. I love people's stories. I love storytelling. It's a big part of why I went into audio production in the first place. And I really just wanted to capture like people's journeys through life and navigate, like how do we navigate it? How do you the first episode is about navigating change, and you know all of us have had to navigate a huge amount of change in the last year, but I mean we go through life having to navigate change. So yeah, I wanted to kind of capture some of those stories of people, and I use a lot of music in the podcast as well because I also write music, and so it's kind of this whole audio experience. And I guess my biggest thing is to have maybe some difficult conversations or tackle some issues that not a lot of people maybe want to talk about, but I want to do it in a way that is inviting and where people feel like they've just had a cup of coffee with like a good friend. That's
Yes. Yes.
yeah, like you also mentioned my heart for true freedom, and I think part of true freedom is learning how to be authentic and how to sometimes face those like not so nice parts of ourselves and maybe the not so
Yes.
nice parts of other people. Yeah, and like learn through the process. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's my hope for the podcast, that we'd open up those kind of conversations and challenge people, but also make them feel like they're not alone. And then there's also like a funny segment in the podcast, because I always think that with every like hard dose of truth, we need to have a good laugh as well. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Humor is essential. Yes.
Humor is, yeah, absolutely.
And just around the podcast, so it's not, I know because we've chatted a little bit about it before, it's not specifically something that has to go into church environments. You want it to really be across the board, accessible to anybody, no matter where they are in terms of religion or culture. Or so just speak into that a little bit. Like, what was your, you wanting to be able to reach everybody, because life happens to everyone, not only people inside of the church.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think for me, yeah, I find it very weird. I find church culture often quite weird, to be honest. Where we have this like very segregated idea of life, and yes, like I think obviously there are things that and I believe Jesus is the only way and all of those things, but I think that we've actually kept ourselves very safe in the Western church. We like our little huddles in church, and we don't even tend to connect with people in other churches who maybe have slightly different beliefs to us. And so we kind of get stuck in these echo chambers of like our own thinking.
Yes, holy huddles.
Yeah, and I feel like we end up like being so cotton wooled in that space, and I think often those kind of environments become quite unhealthy because there's no diversity. And yeah, I think God's wisdom is for everyone. It's not just for his children. And I think that I think there's a lot of like biblical premise for sharing his wisdom, whether or not someone then gets saved or doesn't. Like it's about, I think, it's about recognizing that his kingdom is about so much more than just salvation. And about sharing like the way that we get to live and think, and which in my view should really be very different to how a lot of people are experiencing life. But I think so often the church is very similar to culture. It just like adds Jesus into the mix.
Yes.
And
yes.
yeah, so I think, yeah, I mean, I could probably do like a whole podcast series just on this topic. But yeah, I mean, for me as a musician, I mean, I've also like, and I know we've also had this conversation before, but I get so irritated when people ask me if my music is Christian, because I'm like, yes, because I wrote it, and has the Spirit of God in it because I have the Spirit of God in me. And so I believe,
Yes.
he flows through my creativity. Um,
Yes.
but my music is instrumental. So it doesn't, at no point do I say the word Jesus. And if I write songs, I might not do that either. So then does it make it not Christian? Like, I just think
Yes.
it's so silly. Like we so,
Yes.
like, so boxed in our thinking often. And
Yeah.
I've had such exceptional encounters with God at gigs where it's like in a club or a pub or whatever. And I've had people come up to me afterwards and be like, wow, and they can't even put into words like what they experienced, but I know that they had an encounter with God in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm very, like, a big part of my heart is also like really um myself challenging my own dualism, my dualistic thinking, sacred secular divide.
Yes.
That is still part of how I think because it's still there
Yes.
in some ways. Um as well as challenging that thinking like in other believers, because I just feel like we're becoming more and more irrelevant. And it's not about being relevant and cool. It's actually because we have something of value to bring to the world. And but if we don't know how to have conversations or operate in spaces um with people who don't share the same beliefs as us, like there's no way that we can impact them because
Yes.
we just don't know how to
Yes.
connect. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it's like you say, it's that thing of not feeling like the church should look completely different to the world. So not feeling
Mm,
like in order to be relevant, we have to be the same, but actually
mm,
feeling comfortable enough. I mean, if we just look at the life of Jesus, I mean, he sat with sinners. He was quite comfortable sitting with sinners, even
mm,
though he was of a completely different spirit, and yet he never didn't impact them in some way. And that's
yeah.
more what they all knew he was completely different.
Mm,
He didn't pretend to be like them in order to win them over. They knew he was
mm,
completely different, and yet there was something about him that they wanted to be in his company, and they wanted to be. And I think that what you're saying is so true. There's such a definite divide in our minds as to like between the sacred and the secular, what we see as being sacred or secular.
mm.
And if we can't cross that divide, how do we minister to people outside of the church in a
Mm.
relevant way without trying to be like them? I
Yeah.
think that's probably an age
Oh,
old
yeah,
question.
totally. And I think it's not even about crossing that divide. It's about realizing that there isn't one. You know,
Yes, yes,
that
yes,
that
yes. That
divide.
the divide is actually in our mind. It's not
Mm.
actually, yeah.
God, He doesn't see that divide. It's just us.
No.
And I think
Yes.
we've created that actually in some ways. Oh, there are many reasons, but I think some of it is fear, some of it
Mm,
is ego.
mm,
It's like, oh,
mm.
I get to be known and like celebrated in this like small space of church, but like no one
Yes.
outside of here has a clue who I am. And
Yes.
yeah, so I think there are many reasons for it. I think control, I think they and not all of them bad. I think, some of them have it's maybe just like a misinterpretation of scripture, or
Yeah.
kind of maybe a bit of, yeah, again, this is a,
Yeah.
a big topic, but I think
Yes.
there are many reasons why people do it.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm like, I never, it doesn't matter what you start recognizing in yourself that you realize is maybe not like godly or how he thinks.
Mm,
It's Don't judge yourself in that space, because then
mm,
you almost trap yourself there, but rather see like, okay, well, in my mind right now, I'm like recognizing, oh, I'm thinking of this as like, this is more valuable than that. And what
mm,
is that? Okay, cool. Actually, no, like that isn't God's heart, or
mm,
it's not
mm.
what we see in the life of Jesus. So like, help me, God, to change my way of thinking, help me
Yeah.
to renew my mind
Yeah.
in this area. Help me um
Yeah.
so it's not like a place that then becomes this like where you're getting like, full of shame about something. It's actually
No, no.
like, okay, you know what, that's like, I recognize that that is like an area of my thinking that needs to come under the power of God, or under, I need to renew, or I need whatever, and
Mm,
renew my mind. And then you do. And like over time, it's amazing to see, like, I mean, I remember 10 years ago, I was at a playing in a worship band. I play cello,
Mm.
and I had this thing in my head that being a musician for music's sake was selfish.
Wow.
And I, and that's one of the reasons why I hadn't really pursued a career in the performing arts, because, or I hadn't studied it. And kind of also why I studied music therapy, rather, because I was helping people. So it was like a more, legitimate kind of thing. And
Yes.
I remember this lady came up to me after the one service, and she was like, the way that you play is just like so beautiful, and it really touched me. And do you do this for a living? And I was like, well, not really, because I've always kind of thought it's quite selfish. And she challenged me. She was like the first person. I mean, she didn't know me from a bar of soap, but they'll never forget this. I mean, it's stuck in my head. It was 10 years ago, but I still remember that moment so clearly. And she said to me, like, I really want to challenge the way you think about that, because um that's just not true. Like, it's not
Wow.
selfish, because the way that you can impact people through something like music is actually something truly beautiful. And this is a
Yes.
skill set that you've had and that you've honed over like so many years. I mean, I started playing piano when I was 4. I mean, that 10,000 hours, like, I've done that, and
Yes.
and
Yes.
she's like, why wouldn't you use this? And it was this
Yeah.
sudden like, oh, that's a really good point. And she just basically confronted a lie, that I believed my whole life, that doing music and for music's sake, and just creating something beautiful or something provoking, or something whatever, like that, she was like, that's not selfish,
Yeah.
that actually could
Yeah.
be part of what, like, God has called you to. And
It's what God has given you. Yeah. It's, I mean, it's a God-given talent. And so wherever you use it, and in whatever context you use it, it's God-given. So it's going to be, the Spirit is going to flow through it no matter where you are and where you use it. I think that's just amazing. And I think that is such a valid point, and I'm sure it's something you'll chat about at some point in your podcast, one of your many
yeah.
issues that you can
Yeah.
chat about. But I think it is such a valid point. It's such a valid point of that we, that we feel as if we're not doing something specifically, religious, I suppose you could call it, then it's not, and if we do anything for just our own enjoyment or just because we love it, then it's somehow other, it's not the same, doesn't fit in the same holy box or something like that. But actually,
Totally.
they're all gifts from God, and just amazing things. So part of your Navigating Life podcast then is things like this. Is it things like this that you're going to chat about? Because just your own journey in terms of your finding your own identity, and obviously a journey that you've walked with the Lord in terms of finding, getting rid of, unboxing yourself, really, all the little box, or unboxing God as well, all the little boxes we put him in. So part of your journey is going to be encapsulated in your Navigating Life podcasts, I presume. Is that kind of where you're
Yes,
going with that?
I think so. I mean, I think it will definitely, because I've done a narrative style podcast, so I'm not doing a lot of interviews and that kind of thing. I am getting
Mm,
like people to share their stories over voice notes, and then kind of like weaving that into a
mm,
narrative. So yeah, I think I will share that, because I think, a topic like identity, and even just, it's such a big thing, I think, in any circle, not only in Christian circles, but like, what is my purpose, and what am I here
absolutely.
for? And I
Yeah.
think so many people, including myself, get very anxious about that, and like,
Mm,
am I doing it, and am I on the right track? And
yeah.
yeah, so I definitely think that some of those kind of issues will surface, no doubt,
Mm,
because they're
mm,
also like part of, I guess, the things of life that I often find myself talking to, whether in like a format like in a conversation with you, or
mm,
I've done some other kinds of these things, and these are the topics that often come up. So I
mm,
feel like they are like, they matter to me. I've had a struggle for identity, and sort of quite a rocky road, which again I think is part of life. But
Mhm.
I also think a lot of how you grow up and a lot of what you experience like informs that journey. And some people don't always have as windy a path.
Yes.
Just because maybe they, they haven't had to overcome as many things, and other people have had to overcome way more things than me.
Yeah.
So, it's never about comparison. But I think I'm very passionate about these things because I know what it's like to feel frustrated every single day and to feel like there's something inside of you that's kind of there, it's innate to who you are, but it just isn't coming out. Like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you don't know what it is, you don't know how to kind of bring it out. And I'm like, like as you said in the little intro, I landed in Cape Town in 2010. And if I look at who I was then and who I am now, like it's it's so it's so huge, like
Yeah.
the journey has been so incredible and flipping hard. I mean, honestly, anyone who's ever like done any kind of work in this area will know how challenging it is. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I think I guess like I said, these are really the things that I'm passionate about because I really want to. I know how liberating it's been for me, and I want other people to experience the same thing because I
Yeah.
don't think
Yeah.
that it's God's heart for us to go through life. And obviously it's always a privilege. Like we lead extremely privileged lives, where even
Yes.
pursuing a dream is a possibility. Like there are people all over
Yes.
the world that don't have that opportunity. But I think that
Yes.
for us who do, um, and it's and we have the means and we have the options and the opportunity to do so. Like why wouldn't you? So I think
Mhm.
that's what I'm quite passionate about.
So, I mean, because we both know, God doesn't waste anything. So it's like your life is your testimony, your journey is your testimony, basically, and all the things that you've stepped into in terms of your identity and in terms of stepping into freedom, you can use all of those things to bless and inspire and encourage and activate and empower other people. And then and then people can look at you and be like, if Carol can do it, I can do it. Because
I
I
hope
mean
so.
that's the point. Yeah, it's like,
Mm.
if that if I can do it as just a normal ordinary person, without the faintest clue about some stuff, then you can also do it. I mean, and I know we're running out of time, but maybe next time we can chat about the business that you've started or that you
Mm.
co-founded, which is something a first in South Africa and something that you had no qualification in, you had no previous knowledge about, you just went ahead and did something, and it's something incredible and flipping hard. I know your
Mm.
journey, it has been hard. It hasn't, nobody can say that it was get handed to you on a platter. You've worked
No.
flipping hard for it.
Yeah, that is
but
true.
and but and yet you get to speak into those spaces then for other women. You've pioneered something and you've been a forerunner in something, and you get to speak into those spaces for other women to know that they can actually also, it's possible for them as well to step into something, because so often, I mean, I know with me, so often you think, but I don't have a qualification, I don't have this, or I haven't, had an opportunity for that. And
Mm.
it's not necessarily necessary if you have a calling into an area, and then you just have to take that
Totally.
chance.
And you've got to, and it's, I think, it's that thing of like imposter syndrome, which I think all of us have to a
Mm.
certain degree of like, well,
Yes.
I don't belong here and I don't, and it's like, what, if God has planted you somewhere, if he's opened the doors for you, then you do belong there. And it's
Yes.
not in a like a prideful way. I think like humility is absolutely essential because the minute you start thinking you got yourself somewhere, that's when especially if you really like in the natural or like in terms of human ability don't belong there, then yeah,
Yes.
then you get a little bit, yeah, it becomes a bit of a problem. But
Mm.
yeah, I think that um yeah, if God gives you something, if he gives you a vision for something, if he plants something in your heart,
Mm,
then you need to move towards that thing. It's
mm,
actually as simple as obedience. And
mm.
I remember when I started a business, like, I was it was just me. I'm not married, and so there was no like other income to kind of bring
Yeah,
me while I was doing
to
this.
support. Yes, yeah, yeah.
And I remember thinking at the time, I was like, you know what, I'm gonna do this thing because I never want a stage of life to determine whether or not I believe that God is capable of bringing something to fruition in my life. So,
Yes,
you know,
yes,
if I use this as an excuse why I can't do it, well then when I'm married, I'm going to say, well, now I have, a responsibility as a
yes,
husband, now I can't do it.
yes,
It doesn't, you can come up, and obviously timing is important, but like you can
yes,
come up with like an excuse at any stage of life to not do something
yes,
that God is asking you to do. And
yeah.
I was working at that stage. I worked like 5 or 6 jobs, like just to get enough money to pay my rent, to like put petrol in my car, to eat, and it's, in many ways, like, it's a little bit more stable now, but it hasn't reached like where I would love it to be financially, if I'm honest. And I'm just like, I really trust you, Jesus, that will happen. And it's been
Mm,
5 or 6 years now, and of this journey and whatever. But God has provided. I've never gone without. Like, I've often
mm,
been in a situation where I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work out, but he really never fails you. And so
yeah.
so there is that element, and then I think there's also a very practical element of like, well, if you don't know something, then also you need to learn it. Don't sort of think you're just going to get this like random download, or
Mm.
I think sometimes in some Christian spaces they're like, oh, I just want to receive your anointing, and you're like, cool, but you could also read a book, or I don't know, do an online course and learn yourself,
Yes.
like we want everything to be easy, and actually it's not always. And yes, sometimes it does happen supernaturally. Like I've had that before, where I've had like
Mm,
a word of knowledge for like a client pitch. I didn't know what we should pitch, and I got like a word of knowledge, and they loved it, and we went ahead, and it was this pretty cool project. But I have as many stories, if not more, of like actually learning something or phoning someone and being like, how do you use Excel? I have no freaking clue. And then learning, So
yes.
yeah, I think there's the practical side of what it means to really pursue your dreams as well. And
Yeah.
again, if you have that dualism, if you have that like mentality of like, well, it's only God if it happens and I have a dream and I get a blueprint, then maybe, he is God, he can do it however he wants,
Mm,
and I'm like,
mm,
cool, Lord, if you want to give it to me that way, stunning. But if he
mm.
doesn't, and until he
Yes.
does, and in case
Yes.
he's like, no, this is a process learning thing, then
Yes.
actually be practical. Like
Yeah.
learn. I know so many people who are like, oh, I'm just waiting for this, and I'm just waiting. They constantly, like, the promise is
Mm.
constantly just out of reach. And I'm like,
Yes.
well, what if you just got off your butt and did something? I don't know, like start somewhere. You don't
Yes.
need another word. You don't need another whatever. Like just
Yeah.
start, and then
Mm.
you'll see. And I think often we get scared, and it's like I understand why this is like not judgment at all. Um,
No, no.
but
But it's
it's hard.
true.
It's often hard to
Yeah.
start, and you
Yeah.
feel like you don't know what you're doing. And you know what? The truth is that you never start knowing, like, you know what you're doing. I'm still waiting for that feeling. So, like, based on conversations I've had with people who have been in this game a lot longer than me, they're like, oh
Yeah.
no. I mean, there are things that you don't know now that you will learn, and that, but then
Yes.
then you like find stuff more stuff you don't know, and that
Yes.
then you have to learn that
Yes.
stuff. So
Yes.
it's it's a
You
constant.
never kind of, okay, I've made it. Here I am.
There we go.
There's
Yeah,
always going to be something else to stretch you because that's how God works. And I
totally.
agree with you about the whole waiting thing. I think so often we're waiting for God and He's waiting for us. He's like, you know what, if you just take a step, I will run towards you, but just take a step, like kind of be like, yes, I'm going to do something. And so I think often it's just that we're really worried about going the wrong way. We think that, we think we could miss God, or we could go in a wrong direction. And that is obviously understandable. But I also think that sometimes we don't trust God to be big enough to stop us if we're going in the wrong direction, to be like, no, not that way,
Yeah.
And also I think sometimes we want there to just be one direction, we like, and God, if he loves us, he trusts us. As we become more mature in our journey with him, he is like, you get to choose sometimes, like, here's some doors, which one would you like to
what
go
do you
through?
want?
Exactly. What do you want? Yes, yeah. We're so busy. No, Lord, what do you want? He's like, no, what do you want? I actually trust you with this now, So that is, it's a very interesting part of the journey. And I will definitely not claim to have all the answers, or have always make the right choices, because I find it incredibly difficult. I'm like, Lord, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And he's like, no, you can decide this one. It's okay.
Yeah, I know. It's always those ones where you would really rather just know. Hey, it's
yes,
like
yeah. The writing on the wall, or the neon sign, like just a, just a really clear sign, and those it's exactly those times when you don't get those things.
Yeah, where you don't get, or you'll say like one or two things which are helpful.
Yes. Yeah, like a tiny clue, just a tiny. Okay, my friend. Well, we have now officially run out of time, but thank you so much for that, because that was such an exciting start. And honestly, like, I could sit here and go on for another. Well, our conversations can be epically long.
But we always, whenever we like have coffee or breakfast or whatever, we always have to like block out the morning, or
it's like an hour is never enough, so we always need longer. But apparently people's concentration spans aren't long enough for that, so we're gonna have to cut it short now. But thank you so much for sharing just a small part of your journey this today, and I'm really looking forward to the next couple of weeks, to just getting more into the heart of your story and where you're going, and and part of your journey into freedom and identity. So thank you, my friend, for coming on. I really, really appreciate you.
Yeah, really looking forward to it. And thanks again for the opportunity. And I'm excited because I know right at the end, you're going to do a live session.
Yes.
So if people, I'm sorry, I feel like I'm taking over your
No,
thing
you
here,
go.
but I guess it's like, if things are coming up for people as they're watching them, like, send your questions to Sally for that. And
yes,
because I love kind of engaging with questions, and with if there's anything that I've said that is interesting, or you want to know more, whatever, like or Sally or whatever, just
no, you can, if you go onto my website, which is sallygoodwin.com, then all my contact details are on there. You can email me, WhatsApp me, whatever the case may be. But we want to do a live Q&A so that you get to ask Carol and myself if necessary. Don't ask me anything about podcasting or anything like that, but you get to ask us questions, and we want to, so we still need to decide the details of exactly what time it will be and everything, because Carol has a company and a job and a whole lot of stuff going on. But we're definitely going to do a live Q&A at the end, which will be the last Wednesday in April. So for the next 2 Wednesdays, we will have interviews like these with Carol, and then the last Wednesday in April, we'll do the live Q&A. So get ready with your questions. And thank you very much for watching the very first interview on Women Rising Wednesdays. And we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. So everyone who thoroughly enjoyed Carol this evening, today, I'm getting my times and my days completely confused here. Where am I again? Oh, yes. Everyone who enjoyed watching Carol, please join us next Wednesday, and come and see the next 2 episodes of the interviews, and then the live Q&A. So we are going to say goodbye now, but thank you so much to everybody for watching, and bless you all. And I'm excited, and I hope you all feel inspired and activated and encouraged by what Carol has said so far. So love you all, bless you all, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.